What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Catching Feelings. I'm your host, John Sapanaro. We have an absolutely fantastic show today. And speaking of which, if you're watching this on live stream, you can check it on my Facebook or on the Facebook pages and Twitter pages for the Queens Baseball Convention. So, of course, we're talking about the New York Mets, our first place New York Mets. It has been a crazy start to the season, but somehow things aren't clicking. Things aren't going great for the team. They're not set up the way you'd want it to be. And yet here we are. They've managed to put it all together. They've managed to get enough runs and have great pitching, great starting pitching. And that's where we're going to start, enough to keep them in first place so far. Okay. It hasn't been easy with COVID. It hasn't been easy with the rainouts and the snowouts and everything, but they've dealt with it and they've dealt with it well. And the big part of the reason obviously is the starting pitching, but of course, Jacob deGrom. We are watching something that I don't think I have a point of reference for. So I was born in 1986. Okay. So I did not get to see peak Doc Gooden. Okay. I've seen it since. I've gone back and I've watched stuff, but I didn't get to see it when it was happening. Okay. So clearly I did not get to see Tom Seaver pitch. I didn't get to see this, but now what we're watching with Jacob deGrom is as close to that as I could ever even imagine. Okay, this guy has got a 2.57 career ERA. He has the best ERA in day games in the history of Major League Baseball. The guy just goes out there. His average fastball velocity has gotten higher over the past 3 seasons. The guy just continues to dominate. Of course, they don't score runs for him, but that's another conversation for another day. I just think that we've gotten to the point now after the pandemic shortened season where you look at this guy and you have to say, we are watching a potential all-time great. And we get to watch this guy pitch every 5th day. And it's incredible. As a Mets fan, it's really an unbelievable experience to watch this guy do what he does. And it becomes must-see TV in every single way. And I know we had it a little bit. We had Harvey Day. You know, we've had versions of this before when R.A. Dickey went on his Cy Young run. But this is complete dominance. Each and every single time the guy goes out there, you think, you know what? Maybe it's a no-hitter today. Maybe it's a perfect game. Maybe he's going to do something incredible, like 1 strikeout away in his last start from tying the all-time record also set by Seaver 51 years ago of 10 straight strikeouts. So this guy is an absolute beast. And look, everybody appreciates him. Everybody knows how great he is. But I think we need to really sit down now and go, this is something special. And it's not going to come along every season. It's not going to come along. You know, there's not going to be another Jacob deGrom 5 years from now. This guy is an all-time just amazing player, and we have to really recognize it. And with that, I've got a great guest. Speaking of amazing, you may have seen him Just for Laughs, New Faces. He's got an unbelievable sports podcast called the Dirty Sports Podcast. So I'm going to bring in my guest, Mets fan and former first pitch thrower outer, Joe Praino. Joe, what's going on, man?
Hey, buddy. How's it going?
I'm pretty good, man. A lot of these rants early on have been me being angry about stuff. But this one, I did a Jed Lowry one a couple days ago. But
wow, you're still hurt about Lowry.
I was hurt about Lowry because
you're like 2 episodes ago, it was Jason Bay. You know, you're still fired up. It was so easy for me to forget Jed Lowry because Jed Lowry never was a Met. So I've already forgotten. I know I'm a little bit older than you, but I've gotten so good at putting Mets issues in the past and moving on and looking toward the positive future. I don't even remember. I don't remember Jed Lowry. I don't even remember him. I don't remember him.
You know, for me, the biggest thing with Lowry is just the fact, and we wound up getting it a couple days after I did the show. That was when he had the whole report, like, hey, they wouldn't let me get surgery, and that's why I couldn't go on the field. Of course, it was a Wilpon issue. We always knew it would be.
Right.
But, you know, that's what my rant was about. I was like, I just want to know, look, Lowry's not here. The Wilpons aren't here. Brody Van Wagen isn't here. Somebody has to come out and say, like, look, this guy couldn't stand up for 2 years with the Mets, and now he's batting third and playing second base every day. That was what I was upset about. It was just what happened. I just want to know what happened.
He got Wilpond. He got Wilpond. And you know what the thing is? I don't bring this up to make light of the situation at all, but there's all, the Athletic did another report the other day about the Mets culture and blah, blah, blah. And all these, we had the GM, and then we had Mickey, and then we had this. It's like, stop reporting about pre-Cohen Mets like it's the same thing. It's not the same thing. This is a new era. We're not doing that anymore. We're not getting Will Pond in any regard ever again. So let's stop acting like this is some sort of Mets franchise issue when it was all this stuff was always the Will Ponds.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And like, I know you're a Giants fan, but I'm a Jets fan, and the Jets get it from that angle too. And in some cases, deservingly so. Look, the Mets have been a bad team historically. The Jets have been a bad team historically. It is what it is. But eventually, you have to let that rhetoric go. You can't just sit here and go, oh, well, they did this 15 years ago. It's like, man, can we move on? Especially when they sell the team.
It's like a restaurant. It's like a restaurant. That's why they put up under new management signs. If you go to a restaurant and you get food poisoning, but they keep the name and they keep the menu, they want you to know there's a new management here. The people who gave you food poisoning are no longer here. Might be the same sign, but it's a new, please come back. We won't get you sick again. And that's where the Mets are. They're under new management.
That's a perfect analogy. We got a couple comments coming in. One just shouting you out over on Twitter. It's Tyler Emanuel 13, Joey No Chill. I don't know if that's an inside joke.
That's my nickname from the Dirty Sports Podcast. That's how Ruther introduces me with every episode. I tend to get pretty fired up about sports, and especially if I'm really sure of my opinion on something, that if I get challenged on Dirty Sports, I usually just go into an angry rant. And you know me, I'm a very low key, chill guy, but on Dirty Sports, I will yell at people. And I got the nickname Joey No Chill for just going no chill on our listeners.
All right, you know what? I can respect that though, because I've seen a lot of your Twitter rants on sports, like especially on the Mets or on the Giants or on the Knicks. You really do go in, so I do appreciate that. So I opened up things talking about DeGrom, and I haven't gotten your opinion on it. So just what do you feel when you watch this guy pitch? Like it's to me, it's otherworldly. Like I don't understand how he does what he does.
Well, first of all, apparently there's a motorcycle rally going on outside my place here. Apparently my mom lives at Sturgis. So Jacob DeGrom, you were talking about not having a Mets moment that you can remember that was like this Dickey, the brief stint of great Pedro we had. We haven't had anything like this since Gooden. But the thing about DeGrom is he's one of those guys where it's not just how great is he compared to other Mets. This is the peak Pedro days for the Red Sox, where the whole league would tune in and see how this guy is going to pitch from day to day. Like you said, he could go for 20 strikeouts tomorrow. It is not unreasonable that the next time he pitches, he breaks the all-time strikeout record, that he throws a perfect game. He's one of those guys who's now tune-in television at the starting pitcher position that we haven't had in the league since, I think that the most recent thing is peak Pedro. We've obviously Verlander's been great and Scherzer's been great, and we've had other guys who dominate here and there. But this little run he's on of, right now, potentially 3 Cy Youngs in 4 years, that's peak Pedro style dominance. And as a Mets fan, it's the best thing ever.
Yeah, it is. And that peak Pedro is probably the best comp, because I think it is the most recent comp. Because I've always said in my lifetime, Pedro Martinez is the best pitcher I've ever seen. Yeah. I watched him with the Expos. I watched him with Boston, obviously, all those dominant years. And then, Mets had dominant Pedro for about a season, right? And even then, people thought he was washed, but he did give us one really top-notch season. And I think that's the closest comp, because even just what you threw out, potentially 3 Cy Youngs in 4 years, now you're getting into Greg Maddux territory. You're getting into Randy Johnson, Roger Clemens, forget about the steroids, that kind of territory. You're talking all-time great pitchers. And watching this guy go out there, for me, I think the best I've ever seen is still Pedro. But if DeGrom does it this year and another year, I think he might be the best pitcher I've ever watched in my life.
And it's crazy because we've had a number of guys like that over the years. I mean, like I said, I'm a little bit older than you, but I mean, Greg Maddux dominance was otherworldly, but Kershaw's been an all-timer, and it crazy is the same age as DeGrom. DeGrom's getting better. Kershaw's starting to fall off. That's a whole thing about DeGrom too, is him just being a freak athlete and being a former shortstop, and I feel like he learned to pitch 3 years ago, and now he wins the Cy Young every year. He's incredible. Like, he's an incredible athlete, and what he is able to do, getting faster, throwing the ball harder than he's ever thrown. He's 32 years old. It's insane. But we've had some dominant pitchers. But I think the reason Peak Pedro is the comp is because as great as Kershaw has been, as great as Maddox was, it's the absolute ability to dominate teams. Like, I feel like Maddox and Kershaw both quietly go out there and win, 120 games every year, where the electricity that comes with a DeGrom start, it feels like Peak Pedro.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's funny because, they always talk, especially on the Mets broadcast, like how non-assuming he is, and he's just the guy who goes out there and he does his, he just goes about his business. He comes out to Simple Man by Leonard Skinner, and it's like the most perfect song for him. And so he does kind of fit that Maddox mold of just put your head down and go and pitch, more so than even a guy like Pedro, who wasn't totally out there, but was a lot more eccentric. But it's the stuff, I think. I think it's how he does it.
Yeah.
Because he's got this electric fastball, which Maddox didn't have. And, Kershaw had real early. But Kershaw had that fastball before he was even really Kershaw.
Yep.
He was throwing in, 96, 97. And then once he learned how to pitch, he had lost a lot of that. So,
But DeGrom going out, to me, when DeGrom found his superpowers was that All-Star game. When he had that all-star inning of 10 pitches or 11 pitches or whatever it was, and strikes out the side and basically only throwing fastball. I think he threw one off-speed pitch. And if you guys haven't really dug in on that, just YouTube the Jacob deGrom all-star inning. I watch it once a week. But I really feel like he found himself in that all-star inning and was like, I can just dominate guys with this fastball. And then he has continued to improve his fastball. I mean, opening day this year, he doesn't throw anything but fastballs in the first inning. His first start this year, I should say. He doesn't throw anything but fastballs in the first inning. Against major leaguers, that's insane. To say, I am 100% throwing you a fastball, have fun. Most major leaguers are like, if I know a fastball is coming, I'm going to hit it. He's like, a fastball is coming. I'm going to throw all of you guys fastballs. Good luck.
Yeah, and it's crazy like that his fastball velocity has gone up and up and up, and we both kind of alluded to it. But and look, neither one of us we're not Rick Peterson, right? We're not baseball pitching experts, but I don't understand how that's possible. How a guy can increase his average fastball velocity the way that DeGrom has done it over now 3 and 4 years. It's because it's not like he had a light fastball to begin with. I mean, his first year in the league was around 93, 93, 94. Now if you take the small sample size from this season, his average fastball is 99.1 miles an hour. And I understand he doesn't have the tread on the tires, right? Because he was a shortstop. Like you said, he didn't pitch his whole life. But mechanically, how do you even,
I think it's as simple as he is learning to pitch still, which is crazy to think about. And I think, we're getting to the point where he's pretty much mastered it, but he comes in, I mean, think about how, again, he's the same age as Clayton Kershaw. How crazy is that to think about? He comes into the league so late. He comes in with electric stuff, but there are games early on when he gets totally smacked around. And I think he always had the stuff in him, but the learning to pitch and then the growing as a pitcher, I'm sure now his offseason workouts 5 years later are worlds different from what he was doing when he was just this lanky kid coming up. Now he's going, oh, now that I know how to pitch, now that I know where I feel it after a game, now that I know what needs to be stronger, now I know what I'm lacking when I have those bad starts, fix that. And the stuff stays the same. And, the stronger he gets, the more the velocity goes up. It's crazy where it's gotten to. It's crazy that he was where he was last year and the year before and the year before that, and that he comes out this year and you're like, he's taking it up another level. You got to imagine that we're getting to the ceiling pretty soon. But at this point, I don't know. Maybe he's the guy who starts, feeding 106 in at 35 years old.
It is crazy because, when he came up, he wasn't this huge prospect, right? If you remember, I'm sure you do because you're a huge fan like I am. Like it was that doubleheader against the Yankees, and him and Montero were coming up, and Rafael Montero was the big prospect. He was the pitching guy who was going to be the next guy in the rotation. And even if you go back to 15, the World Series run, you would sit there and you could make the argument for sure that DeGrom was the best pitcher on the staff because he never gave up. He was real good when he didn't have his best stuff. But stuff-wise, you could sit there and say Harvey's stuff was better and Syndergaard's stuff was better. So now when you take DeGrom's mentality, everything that DeGrom brings into this, from a pitching perspective, from the cerebral side, and you match it with the stuff, I think that's why we see this dominance that you're like, I don't even know what to do with this. I don't know how to quantify it.
Absolutely. That World Series run, the way he was in LA, the way he was, fighting through, like you said, like not having his stuff, fighting through the playoff baseball, having guys on base. Syndergaard was awesome that postseason as well. He came out of the bullpen, and I completely agree with you. And I think the thing with DeGrom is also coming up and being the fourth, if not the fifth most, glorified of those prospects, from Syndergaard, Matz, Harvey, Montero. It seemed like they kept wanting to jump guys in front of him. And he just is out there working and getting better and being like, oh, maybe I can be the third pitcher on the staff. Maybe I can be the second pitcher on the staff. Maybe I can be the greatest pitcher that ever walked the face of the earth. It's like pretty cool.
Yeah, he just slowly climbed that ladder. So
now I'm also on the free Jacob DeGrom campaign. If we don't start getting runs for the guy, let him go somewhere where he can win 28 games in a season. That's how much I love him.
Yeah, you're like, you almost want to set him free, but I think eventually that has to turn. It just has to. Our team's going to be too talented. I don't want to go there because I don't want to bring down this good vibe we have, because like he needs to be a Met forever, and we both know that. Last thing I'm going to ask you about DeGrom, because it's crazy. I don't know if we can even say it, but can he get better? Is it possible for this to continue, this, figuring it out along the way? Like, will that be better? Like, have we not even seen the best of DeGrom?
I know you said neither of us are Rick Peterson, but I used to, I coached high school baseball for 10 years. I know I'm not on that level, but the one thing that I always, like, even when we obviously didn't have the analytics department, and we didn't have whatever, but so as a coach of a high school team, you got to go, what trends am I seeing? Like, what am I seeing every day that either makes us play well, makes us play bad, that this guy does? And the one thing I'll say about DeGrom is the fastball is lights out. All the off-speed stuff is incredible. But when he gets banged around a little bit, it tends to be on the same style of thing. Like in Colorado, when that game almost a little bit got away from him, when he's feeding those off-speed pitches inside to the left-hander, and they're kind of yanking it. That's where I feel like he can get better, because I feel like he's going to start seeing, I dominate pretty much all the time, but when I don't dominate, it's when I'm doing this one thing. And so if I stop doing this one thing, I'm unhittable. And I think that's where he can get better. I think he can get better at recognizing here's what's going to go wrong when it's going to go wrong, and just ironing out those wrinkles. So I don't think his stuff's I was joking about pitching 106. I don't think his stuff can get better. I really don't think his stuff's the best that you can imagine. You know what I mean? If his stuff gets better, we break into new territory. But I think he can get better at minimizing when he starts getting knocked around a little bit, which is like still for a Mets fan to say like, oh, he gave up 2 runs, he's getting knocked around. But that's where we're at with him.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you know what? You put it really well, because, again, we both talked about how his strength has always been, pitching as well as he can without his best stuff. And what you're saying, it's almost the opposite. It's figuring out when he has his best stuff, when to pivot from using it in that way. Because we saw it even in the Marlins game. He was blowing away guys with that fastball, and then all of a sudden you got this guy, Jazz Chisholm, that just, boom, knocks him, just he got 2 fastballs by him. Third one, a little bit too much in the zone. It was a good pitch, but the kid just sold out for it. Like, all right, I'm going to swing, I'm going to hit this. And it went over the fence.
And that's the thing is, like, first of all, if you're going to hit 102 upstairs out of the ballpark. Like that also is a little bit of a tip of a cap. Like, what do you I'm not going to kill Jacob deGrom from doing that from time to time, but that is like, it's a little bit of hubris, right? It's like, you can't strike out the side every time with 9 fastballs. So, if that last one, if you feed this guy and feed this guy and feed this guy, like either make that one a waste pitch a little bit higher and he swings at it, or set him up with something up there and then come down. Like, it's just that, you can't dominate. They're still big leaguers. So listen, it was literally one swing in that game. But I think if he starts to figure out, okay, that guy made that swing and these guys are going to take that back there. Now what do I do? I think it's just going to be the approach, and he just keeps getting better. So I expect that to happen.
Yeah, I don't think it's crazy. I really don't. And it sounds crazy to the casual baseball fan. Like, how could this guy get any better? But I really don't, for everything that you said. This is Catching Feelings for everybody who's watching it. We've had some people tune in, tune out, as the way live streams tend to go. Some comments I just want to pull up real quick, shout some folks out. William Moriarty on Facebook says, "What's up, brother?" That's a guy I used to play softball with back in the day. So what's up? And then none of this would be possible without the Queens Baseball Convention, which is fantastic. The one and only QBC, and Keith Blacknick, who's behind the scenes there. He's always got a lot of stuff to say. It's basically his baby. He said, "My favorite DeGrom non-pitching moment is during one of the 2015 postseason press conferences. Daniel Murphy was talking and DeGrom hits the lever on his chair, so it drops him, and Murphy had no idea what was going on." I do remember that. That was, DeGrom seems like he's one of those guys, like low-key, just, he goes about his business, but then he's got this little goofball in him, when he has to be. Yeah. So shout out to Keith for that. And then he does make a great point on DeGrom's pitching, that DeGrom also had Tommy John surgery years ago, back when he was in the minors, which may have helped his velocity now. Years and years later, he's really kind of come back into his body. So, look, man, this guy's absolutely fantastic. That's the bottom line. Can't wait till he pitches again. But let's change gears a little bit to the other guy who has been the 1A to Jacob deGrom so far, and that is Marcus Stroman, fellow New Yorker, just like you and me. He is 3-0. He's got an under 1 ERA. And I mean, like, what's up? This is a Marcus Stroman nobody's ever seen. I mean, he's never been this good.
I think Stroman is one of those guys, and we saw it, here's when Stroman was this good. It was in the World Baseball Classic, and it was him pitching for something. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think he's just such a competitor that when he's pitching for something, he has the ability to take it up to the next level. When he was pitching for the Blue Jays and they were decent, he was pitching for something. He was good. When he's not pitching for something, I feel like maybe it's a little like, what do I have to prove? I've been doing this for a while now. I feel like I'm a big leaguer. And there's just some guys who have that. I mean, I feel like maybe what Marcus Stroman needs is Marcus Stroman looking at an iPad like Mike Jordan in Last Dance. And I took that personally. He heard that he's soft. He opted out. He can't cut it in New York. He's not good enough. He can't be the 1A to DeGrom. He's not that guy. And he heard the chirping, and he came in and re-upped with Cohen and was like, I got something to prove. And he's proving it so far.
Yeah. I think he's the kind of guy to, everybody always talks about how he's small and his biggest asset is his heart, and he just wants to go out there and be the ultimate competitor. So I think he's the kind of guy that when you watch DeGrom next to you, and now he's done it for basically a full season, if you factor in, the watching the 60-game season from the couch, and then, the half season he was here before that. But he's got to be next to DeGrom, and he's got to watch what DeGrom does. And I think he kind of looks at it and goes, you know what? This guy goes about his business a certain way. And I think Stroman kind of takes that and goes, well, how good can I be? How can I push myself? To your point, whenever he's had to pitch for something, and this year it's for a contract too, we can't take that lightly.
Right.
He's coming out here and he's just showing that he's another guy. Like, Stroman's a great athlete. He has been his entire life.
Yep.
And, the question, I guess, is it sustainable? Is he a number 2 pitcher behind DeGrom? Do you think he is?
I think he is, but I think he is, again, it's the approach. It's the mental thing. I think we should almost say he can only be the number 2 after DeGrom, right? It's like, hey, Marcus Stroman, you've been really great. no matter how good you are, though, you know you're the number 2 on this team, right? The other guy's otherworldly. He's got 2 Cy Youngs. He's the best pitcher in baseball. The closest thing is peak Pedro. You'll never be the number 1 pitcher on the staff, but we love it if you could be number 2. And he'll be like, okay, I'll be number 1. You know, like I think that's what he needs, and I think that he can be the. I mean, he's proving it right now. I mean, it's early in the year. It's usually when guys shake the rust off a little bit. You know, guys either usually start hot or start slow, and the guys who start hot tend to keep it, and the guys who start slow might find it. But he's proving he can, and so it's just a matter of sustaining it.
Yeah, it's funny because to me, we've always been looking for that number 2 behind DeGrom, right? We thought it was Syndergaard, and it may still prove to be in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, he's a real polarizing figure. But then we look at, we got Carrasco. It was like, okay, Carrasco's been a really reliable arm in the AL. He could be the number 2. And it seems as though Stroman might, in a weird way, like DeGrom, kind of come out of nowhere for us. You know, he's always been a above average pitcher, but here he comes out of nowhere and just, kind of fills this void. So he might be that same kind of guy who just comes out, does it a little differently, a little bit cockier, a little bit more swagger, but, he might be that guy who just kind of assumes that role. And 2 years, 3 years from now, we look back, we're like, the hell, Stroman? Stroman's been here the whole time?
Yeah. Well, and also that's what you need on a winning baseball team, is like there to be a little bit of variety across the lineup, across your rotation. Like you've got DeGrom, who the most eccentric he's ever been was when he smiled because he lowered Daniel Murphy's chair, and he's like, wasn't that hilarious? We're on national TV. And Stroman's, shimmying off the mound and trolling people on Twitter and has his own line of clothes, and you're like, that's what you need. You need that 1-2, different styles. One guy's big and lanky, one guy's short and fiery. Like it's the perfect thing. I just think the competitive nature of these guys, if those 2 keep it up, you now put the pressure on these other guys, whether it be Walker or Carrasco or Syndergaard when he gets back or whoever, and you say your job is to be the 3rd, 4th, or 5th best pitcher on this baseball team. Like, can you handle that? Like, it's not, we're not asking the world of you.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I'm going to jump back into the comments because we've got a bunch coming in. First, we'll go to Keith, who says, Stroman is pitching for a contract. The major problem I have with Stroman was his swagger and his mouth didn't match up with his pitching. If he can keep pitching this way, he can have as much swagger as he wants. And I think that goes to the point that you just made. But it also goes to what I was just going to ask you. And Keith is not this guy, but some Met fans just really dislike Stroman, and I don't understand why. Like, I do because he's outspoken, but like I think it's a little overblown.
I think it's Mets fans. We're so beaten up. We're so broken. We've seen so many things. It's Harvey Day, and he doesn't want to go to Port St. Lucie because he goes to Rangers games and sleeps with models, and it's great because look at him and he's dominating. And the second he's playing bad, it's like, this guy won't go to PT, this guy won't show up at the stadium. Like, we will defend you to our death if you perform, and then if you're not performing, it literally doesn't matter what you're doing. We will find a way. We're so hurt and broken that it's like, if Steven Matz isn't pitching well a couple years ago, it's like, you know what? He's doing a little too much charity work on Long Island. He's hanging out with young kids with cancer too much. And honestly, focus on pitching, buddy. And you're like, geez, can the guy volunteer without Mets fans screaming at him? But Stroman is polarizing because he's going to be flashy, win or lose. I love it. I think baseball needs more of it. I mean, baseball is dying. We're trying the best we can to keep it alive, but like, they need the swagger and they need the flashiness. And if he's pitching great, then it's awesome. You love it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think you and I are very similar sports fans, or specifically baseball fans in that regard. Like, you look for, I have no problem with the flash and the swagger. And, obviously we're both a little younger than the average baseball fan age, right? Like, we're babies compared to the average, 70-year-old baseball fan. But, I think a lot of that stuff has to turn. I think there's still room for guys like DeGrom. Like, we just talked for 25 minutes about how great he is and how much we love him. There's room for the old school guys. I just don't think the old school guys should dictate everything that happens across the sport. You know, that whole Brian McCann when he was catching was just like the fun police across the league. It's like, dude, let the guy flip the bat. Who cares?
Yeah.
Call it better pitch.
And I love the policing of itself. And I love that there's a red ass like McCann out there who does that, because the beefs are great. The fights are great. Bat flips are great. Guy, I'm pro bat flip, and I'm pro guys wearing one because they bat flipped. Like, it's all good for me. You know what I mean? It's all good drama. Like, you know, I feel like the equivalent is like girls watching the Kardashians or something like that. It's like, the girls don't want them to be happily married. They want Kanye to divorce her. This is the drama that we need. You know, like, I am pro bat flips, and I'm pro guys getting drilled, and I'm pro it carrying over to series later in the season. I still hate Chase Utley for that slide. If I saw Chase Utley in the street, I'd spit at him. This is 6 years ago.
No, you know what? You're 100% right. Like, I think that, you know, they need to just have space for all of it. That's the thing. Like, there's so many, you know, old folks that, well, you know, in 1963, Mickey Mantle, it's like, dude, that's might as well be 200 years ago. Like, nobody cares about that in that regard. Like, you can't compare it in that.
If guys were hitting without batting helmets, just know it was not the same game. If Jacob deGrom hit somebody without a batting helmet, they'd immediately be dead.
Immediately. The ball might go through there. You might see an exit wound at the other side.
About people going, you know, back in your day, only white people played baseball. It's not the same sport. Yeah. John was the starting shortstop of the Brooklyn Dodgers.
It's true. And that would be the only time that would be ever possible. Yeah. You know, I'm 5'6", 150 pounds. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not happening. It's not happening in today's baseball. Altuve is like the only guy that's a close comp for me.
And he's only good because he knows what's coming. Yeah.
Back into the comments real quick. This is a fun one. I think we both might know her, but you maybe a bit better. Gabby Praino says, I accidentally keep clicking on this. I want to support you both, but I have literally no idea what you're talking about.
You know, this is one of my biggest fails as a brother in life, that somehow my sister doesn't know or care about baseball, but also somehow ended up a Yankee fan. Like, my sister's a Yankee fan, and it's like, I hate it. So Gabby, you're here, you're checking in. Just know that I feel like my biggest failure as a brother was that somehow you ended up a Yankee fan.
Wow, we're really diving deep into your family now. This is
well, I mean, come on, look at I'm on a Mets podcast. She's tuning in. She's sitting there like probably, you know, a Yankee hat tucked in her closet.
Then we're going to just check in with Jerry Lobert, who's actually a great ball player that I play softball with out here. He said, how about Shane Bieber when we're talking about some of the best pitchers in baseball right now, which is a good point. And then he followed it up afterward, like 2 minutes later, and says, I didn't know we were talking just Mets, just got here. Yeah. Jerry's a good dude, but that's fair. Shane Bieber is fantastic.
Yeah, incredible. And the Peaches song, I mean, what a banger. Yeah.
You know what, though? Like, I guess there's been a little bit of those kind of discussions because he's younger than DeGrom. It's like, who would you rather have for the next 4 years, Bieber or DeGrom? Yeah. And I know it's going to sound like biased because I'm a Met fan, but it's not. It's biased because I've seen DeGrom do it for longer. Even though DeGrom's older, I'd still rather have DeGrom.
Well, I mean, you know, people always ask these kind of questions, and I always go, you have to give me more context, right? Like, who would I rather have right now as a Mets fan, hoping that we are going to win the World Series in the next 3 seasons? I'll take Jacob deGrom over everybody because that's our end game. You know, now who would you rather have for the next 10 years? Who would you have? Well, what is this context? Is he on the Indians or is he on the Mets? Because, you know, with Cohen, our goal is to go all in. Obviously, we're going all in. And so, you know, if the goal is to win now, I'll take Jacob deGrom over, you know, a fantasy player that you create on MLB The Show. Like, I will take this guy right now over everybody.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's something that, you know, we deal with as a society at large, and I don't want to get into that part of it, but context matters so much. So, you know, people say these things and then you're like, well, yeah, but I I need more. I need more to make this decision. It's sort of like what I was just saying about, in the 60s, you referenced Mickey Mantle. I mean, there are plenty of things you could say about a guy like Mickey Mantle or Ted Williams or Joe DiMaggio, Babe Ruth, even pick your person. You can make comparisons to today, but it's got to be in the proper context. Some of it doesn't matter. When people come out there and go, oh, well, Joe DiMaggio only made $400 a ball game, and now, Fernando Tatis Jr. makes $8 million in at bat. You're like, dude, it doesn't matter. Like, what are you going to do about that? I don't care about that.
Yeah. It's not even apples to oranges. It's ridiculous. I always, in all sports, and we do so much of the GOAT this, the GOAT that on Dirty Sports, but it's always, you got to have the context of when we're talking about when people are playing, who they're playing against, and all that. And that's why I'm always like, if somebody is dominating at the highest level in the modern era to a level that, is comparable to somebody dominating, then they're the best. But obviously we have guys over the years who have dominated their eras even more. And then you go, okay, well, they're the best until somebody is close to that. Now, otherwise, like these conversations, you go, it's so ludicrous. Well, who would you rather have? Well, what's my payroll? What city am I playing in? Am I contending now? Am I contending later? Am I rebuilding? Like, I might rather have, if I'm the worst team in baseball, if I'm the Orioles, or not that they're the worst right now, but if I have somebody that doesn't have a future, I might want a number 1 draft pick that I don't even know what it's going to be than Jacob deGrom right now, because what am I going to do with him?
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Keith chiming in again. This might be something for you. Catching Feelings spinoff, Fractured Families, Mets fans versus Yankee fans siblings.
I love it.
If we could set that up, you think Gabby would be game to come on?
Yeah, except she'd be like, well, I'm not really a Yankee fan. I just like Navy more than I like Royal Blue. Gabby. She doesn't like, she's not heavily invested in anything. Sports, that's for sure.
So you talked a little bit about some of the guys coming back from injury, Syndergaard and Carrasco, when they get back to this rotation. So the rotation's been great. Outside of pretty much one bad inning from David Peterson in his first start, they've been fantastic. And he's probably the odd man out when Syndergaard and Carrasco come back, him and Lucchesi. And you've got a potential starting 5 of DeGrom, Stroman, Syndergaard, Walker, and Carrasco. When you look at that, it's really deep. How good can those 5 be? Can it be better than what we've seen?
I mean, what we've seen so far is about as much as we can hope for it to be, right? But I think the thing with those guys, especially, Carrasco coming back, Syndergaard is Mr. Stuff. You know what I mean? Like, he's another guy. It's like, he's such a freak athlete, but Carrasco's a veteran, like a real true can get it done. Like, he's going to bring that stability. And again, it's like the personalities and what each guy brings to the table, I think is so important. And I think for multiple times in the Mets history, we've been like, here's 4 prospects that are all going to learn to pitch together, but they all have the ability to be the best pitcher you've ever seen in your life. Let's see if it works out. That's not how it works. How many times we've been like, this is the rotation. You need a guy who's going to be like, every day I'm going to go out there and it's going to be this good, and maybe it'll be, maybe it'll be a great game, but it's not going to be a horrible, like, we don't need those blow up games. And I think that's a guy like Carrasco can be a stability at the back end. And then we've got Syndergaard, who can be, he's going to have more of a range in how good or bad he can be. And then of course, if we get, if he comes back and he's healthy and we get good Syndergaard, it's like, yeah, it can be the best rotation in baseball. And that's all that matters, is going into a postseason and saying, like, our 3 best are better than your 3 best, and the guys that are now out of our rotation and are in our bullpen are better than everybody in your bullpen. Like, that's how you win championships these days.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And it also bumps some of those, for the season, it bumps some of those fringier guys out of the rotation. David Peterson probably deserves to be in the rotation, not more than the 5 guys I just mentioned. So,
yeah.
If he winds up, he shouldn't go to the alternate site. He's got nothing left to prove in AAA. He had a good year last year. So he probably winds up in your bullpen. And, it maybe bumps a guy like Gesellman, who I think is toast, and they've only used him once this year. So it shows you what kind of favor the organization has on him, specifically the manager, or lack thereof. So, I think it shapes up it shapes your team so dramatically that you get to bump these other guys into the bullpen. And then, like you said, if you make the playoffs and, now you only need 3 or 4 starting pitchers, now you push those other guys into the bullpen, and something that's been a weakness for the Mets this whole time now becomes a strength, because maybe you've got a guy like Syndergaard whose innings you're trying to limit. Maybe he becomes your 8th inning guy. Can you imagine Syndergaard throwing in the 8th inning?
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. No, and the thing, especially with this season coming off of a shortened season, because we've already seen injuries across the league to major stars. The idea of having 6 men who can all, like, even if it was those guys and Peterson, I feel like there's always going to be somebody who's, I got to miss a start here, I got to miss a start there. So having 6 guys for 5 is great, and for sure having 6 or 7 guys for 4 come playoff time we just got to get there and then be like, I like our chances. I felt that way in 2015, and that's the way I feel about this team. It's like, we're actually we'd be a better postseason baseball team than we are a regular season baseball team.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. And it's not as crazy as hockey has become. The NHL playoffs are a complete crapshoot, but baseball is probably the next one where it's so difficult to forecast, because, in the NFL, you've got a big dominant defense, or you've got a top flight, one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. You kind of know how that's going to shake out most times. And then in the NBA, it's a game of stars. If you've got 3 stars and I've got 2, you're probably going to beat me. It's just the way it goes. Baseball, it's so dependent on how things click and the way a team is built. And I feel a little bit better for this team than I did in 15, because this team will add. They're not going to say, oh, well, we can't bring in a guy like Chris Bryant to play third base because he makes $8 million for the rest of the year, and that's too much. Cohen's going to be like, whatever, man, go get him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm most excited for, especially in the bullpen, because we've always fallen short in that area, and we rarely ever add meaningful pieces. Not since the Dwyer Sanchez year, what I mean? Like, we don't usually add those guys to put us over the top, and I think now we have the kind of team that would. I do want to ask you.
Do not disrespect the Addison Reed trade.
Oh yes. Yes, Addison.
I'm an Addison Reed stan. I feel like I the only thing I didn't do in my Mets fandom that would have been on my, it was like having a Reed jersey. Like, that's something that I should have had for the playoff run that I put on in the 8th inning.
You're absolutely right. I cannot believe I forgot about that. Addison Reed and Tyler Clippard that year were money good for us.
Yeah.
Reed was better. I mean, Reed was fantastic going into another season, another stint with us. Yeah. Okay. So not since Addison Reed. You're 100% right. I will give you proper context on this, because we were just talking about how important that is. But in this situation, when you look at our starting 5, our potential starting 5, right now today, this is with Syndergaard having not pitched, Stroman pitching lights out, and DeGrom being DeGrom. Who would you extend first? Would you extend Stroman, Syndergaard, or DeGrom, knowing that he has the opt-out in 2022?
I think you got to figure out, you have to figure out DeGrom first, one way or the other. The guy didn't sign for all that much when he did, and he has the opt-out. You got to sort that out. I feel like that's obvious. I feel like it's obvious. We're talking about how good can he get. He just keeps getting better, like a once in a generation. It's like, sort that out, knowing that, you already did a deal once with him. He's a low key guy. He just doesn't seem like a guy who's like, I'm going to need to be, $1 richer than this player. Like, that's just not Jacob deGrom's style. And it is, I feel like, Marcus Stroman's style. And honestly, despite Syndergaard really not being healthy in a long time, seems like his style. So I would start with the guy who's the best of the 3, who also is going to probably be the easiest to negotiate with. Now, he's also the oldest, and that's a whole other thing. But, I think you start with the guy who's, dance with the girl who brought you, and then figure out the other 2. But I would go DeGrom, Stroman, Syndergaard, because how do you negotiate with Syndergaard when he's not pitching, unless he's telling you right now, hey man, just give me whatever just to keep me, because I know I'm not pitching. But like, to me, unless show me what you got, otherwise, like, we don't even really have a conversation to have yet.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that in that order for sure. And I think when you look at DeGrom, he's making a lot of money, average annual value. It's the total money in the contract because he was older when he signed it. He would be older when he signed this one. So I think it's relatively simple, because I think what you do is you just kind of tack on some years to the deal he's already got. Because, I don't know what the exact number is, but I think next year it jumps up where he's going to be making 33 or 35 million, so you can just say, hey, look, we're going to give you another 2 years at that same number, to get rid of the opt out, to make sure that you're covered and you'll be here and you're making, way above upper echelon money. And I think that kind of gets it done for a guy like DeGrom. I am going to chime in with Keith real quick, because this is for you personally. He said, I have an Addison Reed game used 1986 throwback jersey available for sale.
Slide into my DMs, name your price.
You kind of already threw all your cards out there on the table.
Yeah.
So we've got a few more minutes. I want to change gears because we've been talking so much about the
so much
rotation.
pitching.
Yeah, so much about pitching. So what is the team has started off really well, considering all the fits and starts and everything they've had to deal with. They're in first place, 7-4. They look good, generally speaking. The offense hasn't clicked, but I think that's just because they haven't gotten reps. So I would ask you, what's your biggest concern with what you've seen so far?
Honestly, my biggest concern is Michael Conforto. I think as a whole, the offense, like you said, it's about reps, and it's about finding the right way to fit these guys together, because we have, it's an abundance of wealth on any team. Brandon Nimmo on base percentage and Jeff McNeil's hitting, they're both the best leadoff hitter on most teams in baseball. Jeff McNeil is the best two hitter on most teams in baseball. Right now we're batting a guy who in my opinion has potential every year to win the batting title, 6th most days. So it's a good spot to be in, but I think figuring out which guys work where, how they're going to work in a certain lineup on a daily basis is going to get the offense fine, and especially with reps. But my biggest concern is Conforto seems to be going through something right now that's maybe the fact that we're hitting him 3 and there's this pressure and there's a contract year and it's whatever. So I'm concerned for Michael Conforto, and I'm also concerned with how we work this outfield to get the guys who hit and get on base in there, but then the defense is so suspect. And then when do you pull them and when do you not? And it's I tweeted about it because Mets fans were raging that Dom wasn't in the lineup all year to start the season. And at the same time, people just want to trash Brandon Nimmo's center field play. And it's pick a lane, guys. It's one or the other. Either Dom's in there all day or Brandon Nimmo doesn't play center field. Or Nimmo's not in there. That's your options.
Yeah. The going back to opening day, what I thought was weird, and look, Nimmo's been the best hitter on the team. He's leading the league in batting average and on base percentage. He's off to an unbelievable start. What I thought was weird was that, I think of all the lefties we have, Nimmo is probably proven the least against left-handed pitching. So I thought it was strange to have Nimmo in left and Pilar in center and sit Smith. I think outside of McNeil can hit against anybody, but I think Dom Smith has the best approach against fellow left-handers. So it was strange. I would have just said, hey, you know what? If we're going to play Nimmo, let's just play Smith. Put Nimmo in center. Right. You don't need to force and shoehorn Pilar into the game. That's what I thought was weird.
It seems like, listen, Conforto's going to play every day, and it seems like Nimmo, and rightfully so, is going to play every day. So if you're saying we want Dom Smith to play every day, that's your outfield. We don't have a good defensive outfield. We don't have any center fielders, and we'll figure it out. We have those guys to fill in defensively late in games. We have those guys to fill in if one of these guys goes down, and then we can, reevaluate. And I'm fine with that. If your pitching is as good as it is and your infield is, strong up the middle, I'm fine with it. But that is the question mark for the Mets, right? Is what do we do? We're always going to get bitten by that poor outfield play, but everybody hits enough, except for Conforto right now, to play every day.
Yeah, for me, the reason why I actually agree with you, I had Conforto on the top of my list too. The reason why I think Conforto is the biggest problem is because we essentially passed on George Springer now for Conforto in the future.
Right.
And I thought it was the right move. I thought, you draw a hard line in the sand for a guy who's 31 years old and plays center field, because in 2 years, guess what? You're going to have to look for another center fielder. He has to move to a corner outfield spot. If for some reason we don't have the DH, that takes a position away from somebody else. And then if we sign Conforto, now you're locked into, 100 million plus deals to two guys who can only play corner outfield spots. That is bad business. But if you told me that you were going to get Springer and just come what may with Conforto, fine. I would have disagreed with it, but I would have been okay with it in the grand scheme of things. So they chose Conforto, and now Conforto's making it very difficult, like to kind of get behind that decision.
Well, it's not the same. There's a lot of things that are different about it. But the one thing it reminds me of, it's crazy that, you go back to the Justin Turner, Daniel Murphy, these guys hit, but they have no position that they can field. They could both play third base, but we have David Wright, but David Wright's hurt all the time. So it's one of those things where we had to pick our poison on where we were going to lack defensively. And then when all was said and done, it's like, should we have kept Justin Turner over David Wright all along? Like would we have won a World Series already? It's a crazy thing, because it's so hard to give up on guys who hit just because you go get them out there, and we'll figure out the defensive holes by putting other good defensive players out there. But if there is a problem with the Mets, it's that we can hit, but we're not hitting as much as we should. But that's the beauty of it. It's like, if we're pitching like this and we know the offense is going to come around, we know we're going to be in a great position. So then you start the lurking fear around the corner is like, is Lindor only above average defender on the infield or outfield? You start getting scared.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring it up that way, because I think one of the things that kind of low key happened with the Cohen ownership change is that, everybody goes at the analytics, right? They're like, forget about the fact they're going to be able to sign a guy like Lindor to $340 million. They're going to bolster the analytics department, which the Wilpons were always too cheap or too narrow-minded to do. But the other thing that it's helped is that we actually have real depth. We have bench players. We talked about the depth in the starting rotation. We've got two guys with a lot of experience that are at the alternate site, Eichhoff and Yamamoto. You've got guys that can pitch at this level if you need them to. And I think that helps safeguard against some of the things that you're talking about. Because look, I want Conforto to hit. I like Conforto. I think he's got captain kind of makeup. I'd like him to be here. I also understand his flaws as a player. I think he is streaky. I don't think he's a three-hitter. I think McNeil or Dom Smith are the three hitters on this team. But, I think that we can safeguard against some, him not playing well or him regressing against lefties. We've got Pilar, we've got Almora, we've got even Jonathan VR, who can play in the outfield, and he's a switch hitter, so he brings, a different dynamic. Plus he's got speed. So, that's really one of the low key under the radar things about a guy like Cohen. It's like, yeah, man, let's go build a full team.
Yeah. And that was the thing about Springer for me, which was, you obviously have guys like Dom Smith, you have guys like Nimmo, where it's, if you're sticking with Conforto, let's say you were sticking with Conforto, and then you went out and got a guy like Springer for center field. Now you have these two guys in Smith and Nimmo, and you go, both are great in their own ways, but therefore they both have value. And what could picking Springer, Conforto, and one of them in the outfield turn into, say, a third base for the other one? And, it's one of those things where you have an abundance of wealth, and you can always second guess. It's like playing, cards. Like, should I give up this card in hopes of getting a card back that's going to even help even more? Or do I stick with what I've got? And I actually love having guys that are around, guys clawing their way into the lineup, because inevitably people go down. And the next thing you know, you trade for this guy, and then, somebody gets hurt and you go, man, it would be great to have Dom Smith right now. So I'm fine where we are. I worry about Conforto. I think get him out of the 3 spot. And, the boogeyman is our defense, and it keeps me up at night. But we have Jacob deGrom, and nobody puts the ball in play. So I'm fine.
So real quick, I know we got to go here in a minute, but starting today in a couple hours, we got a 3-game set with the Cubs. The Cubs are not really the Cubs anymore, not the ones that we're used to. I mean, they still have the same faces. They're just not built the same, right? So, and all these guys are going to be gone more than likely. Rizzo, Bryant, Baez, all those guys are going to be off the team in a year. They're not good right now. They're 6-9, 3-7 in their last 10. They're in last place in that division, which, is a little top heavy, but it's not great. I mean, when you're sitting behind the Pirates, you're not doing anything so great. Yeah. So we've got a 3-game set with them. It's Walker, Peterson, and then DeGrom. How do you feel going into this series? Do you think we keep that momentum going?
I think we have to. I think we do, and I think we have to. I think the big fear for this series is the weather again. It's supposed to be snowy. It's supposed to be cold. I'm at the point now where I want Jacob DeGrom, to be kept in a humidor when he's not pitching, like a fine cigar. If he's like, it's a little cold. If he goes, it's cold out here, be like, he's not starting. I want to in Chicago. But the thing that always excites me about Chicago, whether Chicago is good, bad, or indifferent over the years, this is going back to my early days as a Mets fan in the 80s, is Chicago is a hitter's ballpark. And it's the kind of place where you can look back to series in the season and be like, oh, that was when the Mets went to Wrigley, hit 11 home runs in, 3 games, and their offense has been a totally different story ever since. So the fear for me about like the weather and the uncertainty and whatever is one thing, but it's outweighed by, could this be the offensive explosion that starts the rest of the year? And also, I love going into Chicago against a bad-ish team and going back end of the staff into DeGrom. Because if you can win a game 1, and then you go, hey man, if we win tomorrow, we got DeGrom, we can sweep the series. This is how you start putting together long-term, not winning streaks, but like win bunches. I love winning 4 or 5 games, losing 1, winning 4 or 5 games, losing 1. You never get that whole, like, it's a 20-game streak vibe, but in the long run, you go, we don't have the pressure of the streak. We just win 4 games and then we lose 1. It's fine.
Yeah, it's much more sustainable to do it in bunches. You
don't think about it. You just go, we're a really good baseball team.
3 on, 2 off, then you rattle off 5. You look back and you're, 20 out of 25 after a 25-game stretch. And you're like, you know what? That feels just as good as winning, 15 or 18 in a row.
It feels exactly the same as winning 22 in a row and then being like, and getting swept in a series. It's the exact same number,
Exactly. All right, real quick before you go, there are 2 players on the Cubs that I find exceedingly interesting because of the Mets' potential needs, either later on in this season if the Cubs continue to be bad, or in the offseason because they're both free agents. Chris Bryant and Javi Baez. Yeah. And I'm looking at both of them for potentially third base, right? So how do you feel about the third base situation now? Do you think either one of those guys is a place that we would go either this season or next?
I mean, I would love it if they did, and I think both of those guys are fit. I think the thing with Baez, I love both of them. I think Chris Bryant's awesome, and I think Chris Bryant can come in and be your third baseman, and you never think about it ever again, and you never go, what if? The thing about Baez is he's, again, a guy who's played he's so good defensively. He's a magician that the idea, it feels wrong to pencil in Javi Baez at third base for you. It feels like you're not using him enough. So on a team like us, where you got a guy like McNeil at second, I feel like Baez can come in and you go, what position does he play? Is McNeil better off at third and Baez is playing second? I feel like that would be something that I would have to figure out like in a spring training where I go let's sort this out for real. But the idea of him coming in and being a starting third baseman every day is awesome. And then Bryant, obviously, and I think the Mets are going to take this series to look at that and consider them. And I absolutely think that both of those guys should be, names that are on a whiteboard in our, executive offices going like trade deadline. Like, let's talk about these guys and these, but those guys have to be on the list.
I agree. And Bryant's had a pretty representative year for himself. He's 265, 5-10. It's very much what you would expect out of a typical Chris Bryant. Baez is down from a lot of his career numbers. He also doesn't give you the on base that Bryant gives you. But both guys are great ball players. Keith Blacknick saying, what about Cano when he comes back next year? I don't know. Put him in a cannon and shoot him into the sun. I have no idea,
I don't know this Cano you speak of.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe like you could like sell him to Elon Musk and he can like put him in space. I just like, you can figure it out. Cohen's got the money to figure that out.
Cano, thank you. Take your money and leave. Like, I want him to be a Jed Lowry like footnote. I love Robinson Cano. It was, it was part of it was such a Wilpon thing, like to know that you're taking this guy. It's like, are we trading for Diaz or are we trading for Cano? It's like, we're trading for both. Are you sure? Like, so listen, we don't need anything. Robinson Cano, like, let's figure out a way for him to just like, if he comes back, I'll inject him with steroids again, and then he's off the books again, and we pretend it never happened.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. You get like a Nancy Kerrigan, Tanya Harding situation.
I'm gonna go out to like the Baracha clubs, you know what I mean, and dose his drink with HGH. Yo, let me get your bottle, Robinson. Huge Mets and Yankees fan, just HGHing it, just dosing him.
Joe, this has been absolutely fantastic, man. I know you have to catch a flight coming back out here to California. Thank you for doing the show. Before you go, do you have anything you want to plug? I know we've talked about your podcast, but any shows coming up, anything like that?
I do. I've got the Dirty Sports podcast. Check that out. We have a baseball spinoff called Dirty Slides. It is named after the murder of Ruben Tejada by Chase Utley, by the coward Chase Utley, the assassination of Ruben Tejada by the coward Chase Utley. So check that out. That's also on all places that podcasts are, and we would love to have you on sometime. Talk some Mets baseball. I do that with another comedian, Andy Lazarus, and I'm on joepraino.com. Shows are starting to pile up at Fix Your Life on Twitter, Joe Praino on all social media. That's it. It's the usual.
Absolutely, Joe. Thank you so much. I'll let you get out of here. And, guys, check them out. Dirty Sports Podcast, Dirty Slide Podcast, Fix Your Life on Twitter. He said it all. So, Joe, thank you. Have a safe flight. I'll see you when you get back.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. And let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets. Guys, thank you for tuning in. It was a live show. I thought that it would be just full of just tons of great stuff. Joe's a huge sports fan. He's a huge Met fan. He's got so much information. He's always so plugged into it. We didn't even talk about him throwing out the first pitch at a Mets game, which he weirdly lobbied to do. Is kind of a hilarious campaign that he undertook, and it worked. So I'll have him on again, and we'll talk about that and some more Mets stuff. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. I appreciate the comments being active. This is Catching Feelings. I am John Sapanaro. If you missed the live stream, or if you're just tuning in now, it's about to end. You can catch it on the Queens Baseball Convention YouTube page. Usually is up by the next day. My guest was Joe Praino. He's absolutely fantastic, hilarious comic, good dude, and I will see you guys next time.